The war had raged for 10 brutal years. For a decade, the Greeks had thrown soldiers against the towering walls of Troy, only to be driven back. Troy seemed untouchable. Its gates remained closed, its defenders unbroken, and its king refused to surrender. Then Odysseus, the man known not for strength, but for cunning, conceived a final strategy. The Greeks built an enormous wooden horse and left it outside the gates of Troy. The Greek army appeared to have sailed away, leaving the horse behind as an offering. The Trojans, believing the war was finally over, dragged the mysterious gift inside their city. But hidden within the horse's wooden belly were Greek warriors. Under the cover of darkness, they emerged, opened the city gates, and signaled the returning Greek army. Troy burned that night. After 10 years of war, the Greeks had finally won. But for Odysseus, victory was only the beginning. Far across the sea, on the island of Ithaca, his wife Penelope waited for him. Their son, Telemachus, had grown up knowing his father mostly as a legend. Odysseus had been gone for so long that Telemachus barely remembered the man behind the stories. And Ithaca had become vulnerable. A crowd of arrogant suitors had invaded Odysseus's palace, each hoping to marry Penelope and claim the throne. They feasted on Odysseus's food, drank his wine, wasted his wealth, and mocked Telemachus as though he were nothing more than a boy. Telemachus was surrounded by men who wanted his father's kingdom, but he had never truly learned how to defend it. Then Athena, goddess of wisdom and Odysseus's greatest divine ally, appeared before him. Her message was simple: seek your father. But the journey would become something greater than a search. It would become the journey that transformed a boy into a man. Telemachus traveled first to Pylos, where the old king Nestor told him stories of the Trojan War and of Odysseus's courage. From there, he traveled to Sparta, where Menelaus and Helen revealed more about the father he barely knew. With every story, Telemachus began to understand something. His father was not simply a hero. He was a man who had survived because he could think when others could only fight. And if Telemachus wanted to protect Ithaca, he would need to discover that strength within himself. Meanwhile, Odysseus was fighting a completely different battle. The journey home became a nightmare that stretched across the sea. First came the lotus eaters. Their strange fruit brought such peaceful forgetfulness that those who ate it no longer wanted to return home. Odysseus had to drag his men back to the ships before they lost themselves completely. Then came Polyphemus, the Cyclops. The giant trapped Odysseus and his men inside his cave, devouring their companions one by one. Odysseus survived through deception. He told the Cyclops his name was Nobody, blinded him, and escaped beneath the bellies of the giant's sheep. But Odysseus made one mistake. As the ship sailed away, he revealed his true name. Polyphemus was the son of Poseidon, god of the sea, and Poseidon heard his son's cries. From that moment, the ocean itself became Odysseus's enemy. Winds scattered his ships. Storms destroyed his men. Islands became prisons, and every route home seemed to lead deeper into danger. On the island of Circe, Odysseus's men were transformed into animals by the sorceress's magic. Yet once again, Odysseus survived through courage and intelligence. Later, he descended into the Underworld, crossing into the realm of the dead to seek guidance about his journey. There, among the shadows, he encountered the spirits of the past, including his mother, whose death he had not even known about. For the first time, the journey home became more than a physical struggle. Odysseus began to understand everything he had lost. Back at sea, the dangers only grew worse. The Sirens sang with voices so beautiful that sailors were driven toward their destruction. Odysseus wanted to hear their song, but he knew the temptation would kill him. So he ordered his men to bind him tightly to the mast. He could hear the sirens. He could beg to be released, but his crew refused. Then came Scylla and Charybdis, a monstrous passage where death waited on both sides. And finally, Odysseus reached the island of Calypso. There, the goddess offered him something no mortal could easily refuse: immortality. He could live forever beside her, never grow old, never die. But Odysseus refused, because immortality without Ithaca was still a prison. He wanted his home. He wanted Penelope. He wanted the son he had never watched grow up. Years passed. 20 years after leaving Ithaca, Odysseus finally returned. But he did not arrive as a conquering king. He arrived disguised as a beggar. His own people barely recognized him. Penelope still waited, but the suitors had grown bolder. They believed Odysseus was dead, and they were preparing to take everything he had left behind. Then Telemachus returned. The boy who had once stood powerless in his father's palace had become a man. And when father and son finally stood together, Odysseus revealed the truth. They were reunited not simply by blood, but by everything they had endured separately. Athena had guided them toward the same moment. Together, they prepared for the reckoning. Penelope announced a challenge. The man who could string Odysseus's great bow and fire an arrow through a line of targets would win her hand. One by one, the suitors tried. None could even bend the bow. Then the disguised beggar picked it up. He strung it effortlessly. Silence filled the hall. Odysseus fired. The arrow passed cleanly through the targets. Then he revealed who he truly was. The king had returned, and the palace erupted into violence. Odysseus and Telemachus fought side by side. The suitors who had consumed his wealth and threatened his family were defeated. Telemachus was no longer the frightened boy they had mocked. He had become the heir of Ithaca. But one final test remained. Penelope had heard the impossible claim that her husband had returned. After 20 years, how could she know that this man was truly Odysseus? She tested him. She ordered their marriage bed to be moved. Odysseus immediately understood the trap. The bed could not be moved. He had built it himself around the trunk of a living olive tree, making it permanently rooted to the room. No stranger could have known that. His reaction revealed the truth. Penelope finally knew. Her husband had come home, and after 20 years of war, wandering, grief, and uncertainty, they embraced. The victory at Troy had made Odysseus famous, but the journey home had made him something greater. A husband who refused immortality because he wanted his family. A father who returned to a son he had barely known. And a king who learned that the greatest battle was not always against monsters, armies, or gods. Sometimes, the greatest battle was simply finding your way home. For Odysseus, the war at Troy lasted 10 years. But the journey back to Ithaca took another 10. And when he finally crossed the threshold of his palace, he discovered that home was not a place he had been fighting to reach. It was the people who had been waiting for him.